the story of Buddha, and that he got to the point after having his early life of what we're calling indulgence, and then his life of being a mendicant, a wanderer, and an ascetic. He sat down under the Bodhi tree, and in the Zen tradition, he's said to have sat for 7 days and nights, and looked up on the 8th morning and saw the morning star, and had an awakening. But the story is more complicated than that. But I don't know it all, and I not know it all by heart. But that's the story. And the point I want to bring to your attention now is this point. There's a certain shift from time to time in our lives. We start out thinking that there's, it's explained to us. We start out thinking or understanding. We come to understand that there is a way to behave, and the understanding is that we come to is, if I behave in the prescribed way, I will stay out of trouble, and I will be rewarded. Partly we're rewarded by not getting in trouble, and some of us had situations we had various kinds of trouble. And when it comes to, by the time we get to school, then we have, if you follow the instructions and do what you're told, you will get a good grade. And this kind of understanding of doing what you're supposed to do, or what you have come to understand, is the way to do it, and that you will be graced or rewarded, is one way of understanding. And so the Buddha had his early life, and then he went, and according to the ascetics, you're an ascetic, and then you get some payoff for it. And mostly we often have this kind of understanding. And it comes up in spiritual practice in the vein of that if you have a good enough spiritual practice, you will be worthy of a rain of benefit from above, from beyond, because you're worthy. Now you're worthy of receiving this grace or these blessings. Another idea in the Zen tradition or the Buddhist tradition is because we have the idea in Buddhism of Buddha nature, which is a word for your heart or your inmost spirit, Buddha nature, or for everything. But it's a word for everything from the point of view that everything is divine, everything is sacred. Everyone has Buddha nature. So we're aiming to honor one another. Buddha nature in me recognizes the Buddha nature in you. Thank you so much nice to see you. And then there's this idea that in order to see that Buddha nature, we probably should get rid of all these unpleasant thoughts that jump around, and we should get rid of these painful emotions and clear those aside, and then we'll have a pristine view of the Buddha nature. And is that the way it works? This is the question. And, you know, I don't know about your efforts, but, you know, I've put a lot of effort into that from time to time. A lot of years of thinking that if I cleared up this and got rid of that, then I could see how precious I was, how holy or sacred. And thank goodness, wow, it's about time I got this insight. And it's based on this idea that I clear away these obstructions, which also comes up in, you know, what I tell you about from time to time, the image of that the mind is a mirror. Each of our minds is a mirror, and then what we see reflected in the mirror is not necessarily the way things are, but it's distorted by our own tendencies. Or what Suzuki Roshi said, each of us has a scale. And the scale doesn't come with things. The scale is something you add to things. You know, the kind of day it is, the kind of person you are, the kind of person somebody else is. Scale you add. And he said something very interesting. He said, I'm not saying that your scale is always wrong, but it's yours. And you should take it into account when you start, you know, thinking or talking, and take into account, oh, this is my scale. So Zen Master Dogen, you know, wrote a lovely piece, which I'm, you know, will study again further, but it's a chapter about Buddha nature. And classically, the teaching in Buddhism is everyone has Buddha nature. And Dogen said, no, it's not that there's a you and Buddha nature. You are Buddha nature. It's not that you have it, you are it. And that means that you don't clear anything away. That already was Buddha nature. Your feelings, your painful feelings, your confused thinking already is an expression of Buddha nature. And you thought Buddha nature was something better than that. Or in some way, oh, awesome. I got this beautiful nature now. He said, you've had it all along. But you thought that this expression of your Buddha nature, that couldn't be Buddha nature. So it's a kind of distortion to try to clear away this aspect or that aspect. And another way of saying that, we were saying it today, is mankind has four things useless at sea: anger, rudder, oars, and the fear of going down. You thought I'd go from here to there and I'd become a better person. I'd get rid of this and clear up that, and then everybody could see, and I could see, if they could see, I could see how beautiful I am, and how precious and sacred and blessed my life is. So again, I keep trying to say, and you know, and in my better moments, I understand this, and that you know, Buddhism is not a religion of clearing away these imperfections or impurities in order to reveal one's precious sacred nature. That's not the understanding of Buddhism. The understanding is see things the way they are. Or, as Suzuki said, see things the way it is. So the sea journey continues, and who knows where. Well, I want to go there. I should go there. And you know, we're aiming to steer, and there's something to be said for steering, and at the same time, there are so many ways in which our life is unmanageable and can't be steered, and we end up, how did we get here? And on one hand, we can think about the choices we made, but then, there were things we stumbled upon and things we stumbled over in ways we tripped up. And those stumbles and trips, is that something you planned on? Or how did that happen? I'm sitting here now this morning, remembering how Yehuda, who was Alan in those days, we went to Canada and our canoe tipped over. And at one point I tried to swim and I was sinking fast, and I made my way back to the canoe, and Yehuda reached out the oar and he saved my life. And nobody plans on those things. Nobody thinks, I'll almost die here so that he can save me or whatever, And then, oh my God, so things happen that are way beyond our doing, our not doing, our strategy, our plans. And the idea in meditation then is not that I clear away this or clear away that or straighten in order to have some better experience. So rather than trying to make myself and my life more acceptable, I'm learning how to accept more and sit with more and sit in the middle of everything and with everything, sit with everything. And how much more relaxing that is than, no, I don't want to sit with that. Let's clear that up. And how wouldn't it be more relaxing to just sit with everything? More restful. So now we've gotten to what I'm going to talk a little bit more about. At the end of Dogen's meditation instruction, I've talked with you about the beginning. The great way pervades everywhere. That's a way of saying, another way of saying all these thoughts, feelings, emotions, sensations are part of the great way. You don't clear all these things away and then have the great way. So, and then we've talked about in his instructions, he finally says his instruction for meditation finally is think not thinking, which is different than the instruction he had 20 years earlier when he first wrote his meditation manual. He said, if a thought arises, set it aside. And if you do that well enough, you'll have a great experience. If you do that well enough, your mind will become quiet. So he had set this up, and then after 20 years, he said, no, just sit with everything. Think not thinking. Set aside those four useless things, the anchor, rudder, oars, and the fear of going down. And there's a way, if you come to think about it, of course, that think not thinking is the way it is. It's not just an instruction. It's not possible to plan out what my experience is going to be and then have that experience. Experience inevitably is different than whatever you planned. It appears as it appears. If I'm going to turn my head to the left and look, I don't decide ahead of time what's going to be there. And some vision appears, sight appears, seeing appears. And if I turn my head to the other direction, something else appears. And whatever I saw in one direction doesn't stay as I turn to the other direction, and all of our sensations and feelings are like this, and appearing and disappearing, and things are coming and going, And do I have to make it a certain way in order to understand that I am, this is now, I've cleared out enough of the riffraff that I'm having my special moment or time or so in some sense it's not possible to do anything but think not thinking. But it's a kind of a reminder everything is happening beyond our thinking finally. Beyond what we think one way or another, or conceive, or expect, or plan. Everything is happening beyond that. What will I do? And that is, listening to Michael Mead again last night, and he's repeatedly saying, we're at this time of collapse, which is also the time of possibility. And so each of us in our own life comes to the time of collapse and possibility, and sometimes it's every other minute. So, coming towards the end of Dogen's instruction meditation manual, he says, the zazen I speak of is not learning meditation. I'm not trying to teach you how to meditate. You do this, you don't do that. I said, no, I'm not teaching you how to meditate. This zazen. The meditation I'm talking about is not learning how to meditate. And then he says, it is simply the Dharma gate of, at one point it was translated repose and bliss. But in a more vernacular sense, it's ease and enjoyment. This is not learning how to meditate. It's simply the gateway to ease and enjoyment. Traps and snares can never reach it. Traps and snares you can never grasp. If you could get hold of your mind and then, you could get it in the right shape, right? But you can't. There's no way to trap it or cage it or grasp it, conceive of it. The mind itself is inconceivable. What would you do with it? So anyway, traps and snares can never reach it. Once its heart is grasped, you are like a dragon sporting about in the water. You are like a tiger at home in the jungle. So I'll talk just a bit about this and then we'll open it up for the others here. So I've said something about it's not learning meditation. You do this, you don't do that, but it's settling down here, being in your own body, in your own place where you are, and finding in that your gateway into ease and enjoyment. Ease, again, is it's the same word in Buddhism for pleasant, but it's also the word then for being at home. Can you make yourself at home in your being? And we all have different sensibilities about what home is, and so and classically, as I mentioned this morning, Buddhists leave home. It's, to become a monk, to become a nun, to become a renunciate, to become, a practitioner is to leave a home where you've been, where you grew up, where you abided for so long. But you're leaving that home, and ideally, to be in your true home. So your true home is this vast space of everything. How can you be at home in everything? This is the gateway. Sitting in this tradition is the gateway for making yourself at home. Here? And sometimes we have the sensation like, oh my God, here? Are you kidding? And other times we're like, oh, okay. I'll find out what to do about this and how to be with this and how to be at home here. And in this regard, one of my favorite poems is the poem by Xuanzi, who said, easy is right. To have ease is right. Dogen says that to be at ease is right. Begin right and you are easy. And I say to begin right, well, and ease is also this stability. You have some stability and you see if you can keep coming to your stability. Locating your stability so that if you're stable, then you receive the stability of the earth. And you have ease because you're not fighting with the earth, and you're not so scattered in your own being that you're not able to receive the support of the earth. So you're sitting, you make yourself stable, easy. Easy is right. Begin right and you are easy. Continue easy and you are right. The right way to go easy is forget the right way and forget the way is easy. That's such a lovely short poem. I got that from Hugh Milne, who teaches craniosacral work. And joy, in that sense, and ease is rather analogous also then to happiness. And we usually think of happy, what reason, that we need some reason to be happy. And in this case, we're studying, and at some point, it's not about producing happiness, you see. It's allowing for happiness for no reason. Oh, I haven't gotten that far, have I? and this morning people were saying, and you laugh. Yeah, I haven't gotten that far. And we have some happiness, even though it's like this. And then joy is the sense of, classically in Buddhism, resonating with the object of awareness. What I used earlier, harmonizing body and mind, harmonizing self and other, perceiver and perceived. This world and the world behind, or the world beyond, or the world above, the world below, the world that is everyday world and the world of the sacred. And again, we don't try to eliminate the everyday world to get to the sacred world. That's one strategy. But we're like, have some resonating with, our breath, enjoying our breath, enjoying our walking, enjoying a cup of tea, enjoying some visiting with friends, enjoying a walk, and so on. And again, with joy, as with ease or happiness, we tend to think, oh, I'll clear up these things that are not so enjoyable, and then I'll get something that I can enjoy. And when we do that, of course, we miss what's right in front of us, and already in our awareness that could be a source of enjoyment. But we've come to learn that happiness or joy means I need to clear this up, and then I get something better or different or more joyful, and I'll get that by getting these other things out of the way, and I'll get happiness by clearing up my defects and so on. So we're learning, in some point, we give ourselves, permission, or, we receive grace. For no reason. Someone asked Trungpa one time, what is the meaning of patience in Buddhism? And he said, grace. Which was so lovely. He was so brilliant with these not obvious connections. Oh, one more thing about this, and then we'll pause. There doesn't seem to be any, I don't hear where anybody's found it finally, although it's pictured somehow in our imagination that we could get to a destination where we would no longer be beset with whatever it is that has been our downfall all these years. I still am easily become a small person. And, literally sometimes people say, grow up. Usually when they say grow up, they're not, they're saying it as a way to say how bad you are. They're not saying like, oh, come on, sweetheart, grow up. They're saying, grow up. What's wrong with you? But we don't arrive at this place of grown up and stay there. We arrive where we're mostly there, but we may be more and more there, and mostly there, and even more mostly there, but sometimes we find that we're not there. So then we study how to resume our well-being, our sense of, and our willingness to be with what is arising and what is perplexing, what is astounding, what is disturbing, and see how we can relate with it and be with it, work with it or live with it. We keep studying. So we had a wonderful time this morning at 8:50. We started talking, some of us online, and it was so lovely because each of you online gave like a little Dharma talk about what you were finding useful in your lives. So I'm appreciating, as I often express, you have the mind that seeks the way, that seeks, how do we do this here? Another classic version of this is, do not seek for nirvana outside of samsara. If you try to get rid of samsara, you'll never find nirvana. No. And yet nirvana is not the same as samsara. But you can't find the nirvana outside of, like if I get rid of all my problems or my hindrances, then I'll have nirvana. I have the destination of peace and calm, the other shore. So this is another version of, right here, the Dharma gate of joy and ease. A dragon entering, sporting about in the water, a tiger at home in the jungle. And there's all those things going on, but you have a kind of sense of your, in Vajrayana it's called pride, Vajra pride. You're a sacred being, and even sacred beings can have this. And there's all these creatures running around in the water and in the jungle, and they're not your concern exactly. They're taking care of themselves. So you don't worry about turning your jungle into an English garden, or your swimming hole into a beautiful swimming pool with the chaise lounges. And no, you're just sporting about at home with all of it. Okay, thank you. We have a few minutes now to visit. Questions, comments, reflections, observations here or online.
Do you have any, like when we're caught in a moment and it's, whatever, like you said earlier, like a trauma response or whatever it is, and it's so big, consuming.
It's so gripping. It's so gripping.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so, and I'm thinking like, if our friend Jack would say like, oh, you have like an anchor or something to kind of bring you back or to bring you out. I don't know. Have you ever come across something like that that serves as a kind of way back?
Well, all kinds of things over the years. One of the early ones that, Katagiri Roshi, Katagiri Roshi told me I needed to clear up my anger, work on it. And I was very resistant to the idea. I said, if other people are having a hard time with it, well, then they should work on that, shouldn't they? But, chanting, I tried chanting. He said, chant. And I said, like what? And he said, the Heart Sutra. And I said, I can't do that. It's too long. And he said, there's a mantra at the end of it, Ed. Chant that. Gate, gate, para, gate, parasam, gate, bodhi, swaha. And now I chant Kanzayon. The Kanzayon, Namu, Butsu, Yo, Butsu, and it's 10 lines about, for the Bodhisattva of compassion. But it's doing something else with your mind rather than continuing to struggle with, how do I fix this? How do I change this? How do I get rid of this? And the fact that you're struggling with it like that means that it can't go anyplace. And I tried that, but I've also done, zazen, sitting, sometimes will help. But, I do qigong because it saves me. And I do prayers because they save me. I can't do without prayers. Prayers are, people have different understandings about prayers, and, I find prayer useful in that, and I think of meditation, zazen, as implicitly prayer. I'm sitting with everything. Please help me. And that's pretty good, you know, when, you know, our energy teacher, Linda Cesar, if nothing else is working, ask for help. And help seems to, something happens. So I ask lots of things for help. And recently I was having trouble sleeping, and I started chanting, and I went right to sleep. I don't know if I even got through 10 lines. Kansayo, Nama, Butsuyo, Butsu, and you, conk. So and there's a certain problem of looking for what to do. So, you know, at some point we're in the don't go where you think you want to go. You're continuing to struggle. Then ask the way to the spring. Ask for help. But and you know, walking used to help me, and walking still helps me. Qigong helps. Prayers help. Chanting helps. Sometimes I've gone out from my house in Fairfax and I'm so upset, and one walk around the block, 12 minutes. It's a different world. Oh, you'll find things. You have things.
Another idea that came up to me is that so many times I have said, well, when this or that happens, I will be at ease or I will have enjoyment. And what I realized is that I'm trying to find a way that I can have some ease and enjoyment while I do my everyday life, because this is the only thing that I've got.
Yeah.
So
And this is reminding me of, you know, the point I was getting to about nirvana and samsara, and, you know, don't look for nirvana outside of samsara, and you don't get to you know, like the easy chair of enlightenment. There's no easy chair of enlightenment. Oh, now I can just lay back in my enlightenment. And Dogen's, and the school of Dogen is the school of practice and enlightenment are one. You don't have enlightenment without your practice. So you practice making yourself at home in the everyday, and that's also your enlightenment, you know, which is what you're talking about. You have your happiness and ease, ongoing. And anyway, you know, we have our ups and downs. Naomi Shihab Nye says, to know kindness, you scrape the bottom of the barrel of sorrow, and you scoop up sorrow until sorrow threads up everything in life, and then you'll know what kindness is. You find the kindness in all that sorrow. I'll send it to you. I've got it on my computer.
Thanks.
So yeah, we weathered through it, which is another response, Kate. Or what do we do? And Roka says, among these winters, there's one so endlessly winter that only by wintering through it will your heart survive. Only by wintering through. And you learn how to winter through, and you're doing it. Thank you, Madam, for coming on and sharing that.
Yeah. I'm in some Zoom grief groups, and that helps a lot.
Yeah.
Through the partners and through the hospice group.
Yeah, through the hospice, yeah. Yeah, those people often know what they're doing. They even have that in Marin County after my adopted mother died. You know, the county calls up, you want to be in a grief group? You know, it's like, and the people who do those groups they know what they're doing. Yeah. Really support you to grieve your grief and undergo and they don't say get over it.
No. And you know why the woman says she likes them? Because the people in grief are real. They're authentic.
Are real.
There's no BS.
Yeah, there's no BS.
Yeah, there's no time for that. It's not shallow. So that's that's sort of Zen, right?
Oh, absolutely. No. there's something very real. Grief is the tears of grief open up the water of life and our inner world, and it's the grief of losing the world we've known. But on the other hand, we have a chance to enter into a larger world that is opened with our grief, and find our home or our way in that larger space that we didn't know about because we were at home where we were. There's a Rumi poem. I could say, and let's finish with this. He says, an accident gradually gets accepted as something that needed to happen. And it's not just an accident, it's death, loss, grief, gradually gets accepted as something that needed to happen. Sickness melts into health. Staying congealed, the worst thing is to stay congealed. And then he has this lovely lines. He says, let your liver dissolve to blood. Let your heart break into such tiny pieces it can't be found.